between the law of attraction and like Tony Robbins' whole raise your hand, say I, kind of this whole like attitude of dominate your life, dominate everything, just super pepped up with fuck knows what. What that's missing is acceptance. This whole neoliberal, every aspect of your life is like a potential market, a potential job. Like no hobby is truly worth it unless you can make some money from it. So everything in your life needs to be geared towards learning and growing. This whole like dominate the world attitude, it misses the point sometimes, I think. And you know, for those of us who are driven by the allure of social status, you know, it's all well and good, but I feel like for those of us who want peace in their life, and for those of us who want, you know, a little bit more of an organic personal growth and a life that truly reflects who we are deep down, not who we've decided we need to be to, you know, be a peak performer or whatever it is. For those of us who value those things, it's quite frankly exhausting, especially given that gaining status in the society that we have today, and I'm talking like top level status, tends to mean ingratiating yourself into a system of people who do not care about the human well-being or, you know, the faintest flicker of hope about the future of our planet if it gets in the way of what they want, which is usually money. So they tend to just do whatever they need to do or say whatever they need to say to have their ends met and further their own ends. That's not exactly a very enticing thought for those of us who do care about human well-being, who do care about looking after others and having the world be a relatively decent and fair and friendly place to exist in. Still, I think there's a time to fight. There's a time to try to change the social and cultural norms that have made the shit show I just mentioned an inevitability. To fight for a future on this planet, to fight for decency and respect when people are steamrolling each other for their own sadomasochistic ends. Like, yeah, definitely do that. And also definitely better yourself and seek to overcome and transcend your personal circumstances and the limitations that are in the way of you living your best life, if you like, right? It's not an either or thing. Definitely do that too. I think for the world to be a fairer place, a place worth living in, and a place that we can live in, you know, by the end of the lives of the next generation of people that are, you know, just being born here today, it's definitely not an either or thing. It's definitely something that we all need to look at and try to improve society as a whole, but also try to rise above our personal circumstances. I think we need to fix the deep flaws in our values and priorities as a society, and I also think we need to find it in ourselves to rise above our own personal circumstances and the limitations of our own minds and our own lives. But, and this is a big but, and it's kind of the whole point of this video, there's a time and a place, I think, not to try to overcome, but to merely accept. And I think that is part of a larger drive, a larger push towards overcoming, and makes it a hell of a lot easier. Like, there's things you can't force into changing, for example, other people's behavior, right? And there's things that aren't yours to overcome, like other people's struggles. You can support them, you can be there for them, but you can't ever do that for them. And I think oftentimes it's easy to try to insert ourselves into those things because we've got our ideas, or we've got the way forward, or we're just such a high performer that we've got the answers to everything, you know. But actually that's not our business. That's not our fight, you know. And then there's other stuff that I've found in my life which sometimes it's not to be overcome because it doesn't need to be overcome. Like, I'd come to see it a certain way that made me feel like it needed to be overcome. But actually, when I take a step back from that sort of raw drive of the whole raise your hands, say I kind of an attitude, right? If I just take a step back from that for a second, I can actually see that I've seen it as an obstacle to overcome, but actually it's quite harmless. Actually, it's a fact of life, or it's a quirk of existence, which is merely part of who I am or how my life is unfolding. And if I can make my peace with that in some way, if I can come to accept that in some way, then it's no longer an obstacle, but actually it's a bit more texture to my life, you know? I think this way of thinking can easily make it so we kind of get worse at handling life's adversity so that we kind of can't handle like just the most minor inconveniences. It has to be reframed, or it has to be done in such a way that enables us to like manage, rather than just going, do you know what, I don't like that, but that's how it is, and I'm just going to move on with my life. I see this whole thing as sort of like a through line in like neoliberalism, but I think also, as with like spirituality and other things, if it becomes too big in your life, this kind of a way of thinking, it can sort of like invade other areas of your life and have a negative impact on other parts of your life too, I think. So like, while there's a time and a place for this whole sort of like, you know, be better than you were yesterday, and like transcend your limitations and all that, it's definitely a time and place for that, but it's got to be kept in check. And if it doesn't, then I think it can be similar to what I talked about in last week's video with spirituality, where it can sort of invade other parts of your life and actually sort of limit your happiness and limit your freedom in some ways as well. Where the spirituality aspect of this is more like escaping into something that allows you to avoid being human, this stuff is almost like, it's like bulldozing, like trampling what it means to be human, and just being like, no, I'm not going to be who I was, I'm now going to be who I think I should be, who I think I have to be, who I want to be, and sort of like bulldozing, and I've talked about this before on the channel as well, bulldozing over like the organic, like authentic you that's deep down, that you're now repressing with all of this bullshit about being the best version of yourself, kind of a thing. Like, I think if we're going to be the best version of ourselves, that's going to come out of getting to know ourselves and allowing ourselves to sort of flourish in a way. If you want to have a life that reflects you, if you want to like be yourself and like be the best version of yourself, I don't think 101 different ideas that have come from 101 other people who feel that that's the best way for them to be themselves is going to help you very much. Do you know what I mean? I think with this sort of like spaghetti junction of neoliberal innovation that's just like just churning out new things all the time, and we have that not only in products, but we also have that in like how we're supposed to behave, whether that's in like a professional environment or at home or whatever. There's all these new improvements. Here's how you can do better than you did. Here's how we can improve this, that, and the other. I think the risk is that we ourselves as humans begin to think of ourselves in the same terms as we think of our technology, where all the time we need to improve, all the time there's a new update, there's a new upgrade. But if we actually look closely at what happens when like you get a new software update on your phone or whatever, usually it's called an upgrade, but it's not really an upgrade. It's not improvements, it's changes so often. And I think if we're not careful, we can start to treat ourselves like that, where things aren't necessarily improving, but things are changing, and so, well, it must be good, right? It's easy to get that sort of like itchy feet of self-improvement, but if we take a fucking moment and like take a step back and breathe and like try to get to know ourselves as individuals, then maybe there is some real improvement, some organic improvement to be made. But anyway, all this mind over matter stuff, I think there's a time and a place for it, and it can be good. But the one thing I think, you know, for all the success it might bring, the one thing it can't bring, I think, is contentment. I think we've got to find acceptance for the way things are sometimes in order to have access to contentment. With all this sort of high performer attitude, you know, peak performance, dominate the situation, raise your hand, say aye, all this kind of pump yourself up to live life at the fucking max, right? What that's missing is acceptance. And I think for all the power that that kind of an attitude is driving towards, is striving for, there's something of that power that is somewhat hollow because it is lacking in that acceptance. There's a power in acceptance, I think, because acceptance can give you the strength to endure, and it can give you the strength to walk away from something. It can let you close a chapter and begin a new one, but it can also help you to love more deeply and be more present in your life and in your relationships with other people and with yourself. Acceptance, I think, can, in a much more effective way, like talking about highly effective people and stuff, in a much more effective way, I think acceptance can make it so you can look into the eyes of someone that you love and know them deeply, and warts and all, know that you love them completely and that you're loved in return. I think mind over matter, it can be useful. It can be ultimately one of the only things that might get you out of a rut sometimes, right? But it can also be hubris, and it can also be far too self-important for its own good. And without acceptance, I think this mind over matter attitude can become just another way to avoid reality and to escape ourselves. I'm Andy Fellows, and this channel is about thinking for yourself in the face of cults, destructive spirituality, and toxic online culture. And if you want a bit of extra content from me every single week, then consider becoming a patron. There's a link to that in the description below and on the end card in just a second. Otherwise, please be kind and ask good questions, and I'll see you in the next one.